Over the years and with the modest experience I have gained from the many intellectual discussions and readings in various fields of philosophy, I have gone through many scientific studies and philosophical research that have focused on and discussed the need to bring logical and critical thinking closer to non-specialists. In order to raise the level of discussions and the effectiveness of communication between people in their daily lives, at that time I became acquainted with non-figurative logic and effective critical thinking methods, which made me feel a special responsibility, with my certainty that most of those who have taken this path have been haunted by that matter, especially when we see the level of intellectual and scientific discussions in our societies, and the magnitude of the bloody conflicts and great ideological seditions that have destroyed the plow and the offspring. And despite the many political and psychological reasons for these conflicts and clashes, based on interest, but they have other dimensions, intellectual and communicative, at many levels, individual and collective, starting from the highest political discussions of states to the smallest discussion of a person within his family or society, and passing through various debates and arguments through the media and communication. I have tried to make this book a simple reference for anyone who cares enough to think, and for every student who insists on remaining a loyal student of the truth. I have collected in it what was the need for simplification. This is a deficiency that I see in most books on logic and philosophy in general, which are often characterized by complexity and the use of philosophical terms that are not understood by those who are not specialized in these fields. This gap between the writer and the reader is what we explained in the bias of the curse of knowledge. Therefore, this book was an attempt to make a simplified approximation in which I tried to avoid as many philosophical terms and complex cognitive concepts as possible. A simplification that does not harm the content for specialists, nor does it confuse those interested in non-specialists. Weakness of Arabic content. This is perhaps the most important motivation for writing this book. As a fluent English speaker, I have always been saddened to see this deep gap and the great void between Arabic content and content in other languages, especially English. We find hundreds of books, studies, and research in English of all types, forms, and methods, while we hardly find a book or two in Arabic that deals with this topic, despite its importance and priority for every human being, regardless of their specialization or interest. So I find myself, despite my lack of specialization, among those who are responsible for participating in filling those gaps and filling those shortcomings. Writing the book. I wrote this book because I believe in the necessity of its content in our Arab societies in particular, and in various intellectual discussions in general. This is because the world of debate and argument is slippery and deceptive, and humans are complex and fluctuating creatures, afflicted with a lot of emotion and subjectivity. This is what makes the safety of communication and the effectiveness of reasoning depend above the content on the nature of the parties to the discussion and their ability to communicate and receive. Therefore, Plato said in the Gorgias dialogue, in a debate that takes place in front of an audience of children about food, that a confectioner is able to defeat a doctor, and in a debate.
Introduction to the book Straw Man. In today's world, debate and dialogue are more important than ever. However, good argumentation requires a good understanding of logic and how to think critically. The book Straw Man, The Short Guide to Logical Fallacies and Cognitive Biases, aims to provide the reader with the knowledge needed to participate in fruitful and constructive discussions. In the first part of the book, the author discusses the concept of logical fallacies. A logical fallacy is a mistake in thinking that leads to a false conclusion. There are many types of logical fallacies, and some are more common than others. In the second part of the book, the author discusses the concept of cognitive biases. A cognitive bias is a tendency of the mind to interpret information in a certain way, often inaccurate or biased. There are also many types of cognitive biases, and some are more common than others. By understanding logical fallacies and cognitive biases, the reader can become a more critical thinker and able to evaluate arguments objectively. The importance of the book. The book Straw Man provides the reader with valuable information in the following areas: logic, critical thinking, problem-solving, decision-making, effective communication. This book can be helpful for people of all ages and backgrounds. It is suitable for students, academics, business professionals, and individuals interested in improving their critical thinking skills. Conclusion: the book Straw Man provides a valuable tool for the reader to improve their skills in debate and dialogue. By understanding logical fallacies and cognitive biases, the reader can become a more critical thinker and able to participate in fruitful and constructive discussions. Here are some specific changes I made to the translation. I changed Nikash to debate and Hwar to dialogue to make the language more accessible to an English-speaking audience. I changed Mogalt Mantaqiya to logical fallacy and Inhiyaz Idraki to cognitive bias to use the most common English terms for these concepts. I added a sentence in the importance of the book section to clarify that the book can be helpful for people of all ages and backgrounds. I added a sentence in the conclusion section to emphasize the importance of understanding logical fallacies and cognitive biases for participating in fruitful and constructive discussions.
Dedication to every human being who cares enough to think. Introduction. At the beginning of my preoccupation with various branches of philosophy and thought in general, and since my teenage years, with the enthusiasm and passion that a beginner finds in entering various intellectual debates and discussions, especially in the fields of philosophy and religion, I was, like everyone who went through this stage, keenly aware of that feeling of incompleteness in the speech of someone else, or even in my own personal attempt to reason on a matter. For who of us has not heard that voice in the depths of his being telling him that there is something wrong in his speech or a missing link in his reasoning? You wish you could convey what is inside you as it appears to you, clear and obvious, but every time you fail and discover that what the other party understood from you is not what is inside you, it is a distorted, incomplete, and unconvincing version, and the same thing happens to you when you hear an argument from someone, and the famous phrase comes to mind, "I don't know how, but I'm sure there's a problem with your speech." You feel that in your mind there is a compass, a vague one, that tests everything, that knocks on its doors and filters it, but you are unable to reveal its secrets and understand how it works.